Well, this is going to be a fun segment. I'm doing this segment because I want everybody to yell at me and dislike the video. All right, I'm kidding. That's not why I'm doing this segment. I'm doing this segment because I think it's important and I want to talk about it, even though this debate literally is dead and gone because the moment of opportunity was missed. But anyway, Noam Chomsky went on a podcast. Hold on one second and I'll get you the Vanguard podcast. And he was asked about force the vote. And he gave a very definitive answer. Let's watch, and then I'll respond.
Something else that I wanted to ask you about, Professor, and I don't know how much, if at all, you pay attention to the online leftist community, but one of the more fracturing and extremely divisive debates in recent memory occurred over this idea called force the vote, which sought to pressure progressive congresspeople into using their leverage to essentially threaten Speaker Pelosi's reelection, and as a result, potentially get some policy concessions, or at very least a floor vote on Medicare for all. If you paid attention at all to this debate, did you have an opinion on the strategy? And do you think that elected progressives, congresspeople like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Ro Khanna, who believe in policies like Medicare for all and a Green New Deal, have a responsibility to be fighting to push President Joe Biden and his administration even harder by using their leverage in instances like this, or to hold up key bills in order to get policy concessions?
Let's take a look at the real world, not a dream world, the world we live in. Suppose you manage to push Pelosi to say, let's have a vote on Medicare for all. And in the Senate, push Schumer to have it. We know exactly what's going to happen. 50 Republicans will vote against it. A large number of Democrats will vote against it. 2, certainly, Manchin and Sinema, probably plenty of others. So what we're saying is, let's do something to be defeated. Is that a strategy? I mean, it's nice to say, I want this, but we're not children who say, I want this piece of candy. I'm going to ask for it even if I'm going to be locked up in my room.
Now, Chomsky goes on to basically say, this isn't the answer, this isn't the solution. The solution is, and I quote, intensive organizing on the ground. So he says, this is not the way to achieve it. The way to achieve it, you have to start with the intensive organizing on the ground. Now, I mean, I would say, yes, Noam, that's exactly right. The answer is intensive organizing on the ground. But you need a spark in order to do that. And you need a unifying force to be able to do that. You need a moment in time and an aim and a goal that lights the fire under everybody's ass so they start doing the work and doing it with more people than ever before. So he says the answer is intensive organizing on the ground. What do you think can and will trigger the intensive organizing on the ground? Maybe trying to force the vote in the middle of a pandemic for universal health care. Okay, so, listen, let me rewind a second. I'll break this down a little more specifically, but let me just say up front, I love Noam Chomsky. He's one of the biggest intellectual influences on me. He's a living legend, and he's not some sort of corrupt neoliberal, okay? And I think this is important to point out because you don't malign somebody's intentions when there's no reason to do so. So that's just counterproductive, and more importantly, it's just factually wrong. So it is possible for sometimes to just disagree with people, and in my opinion, for people to be very wrong. But maligning intentions is something different, and I try my best not to do that because I think that's counterproductive, and I just think it's not true to say X, Y, or Z is corrupt, and that's why they have this view. He's not corrupt. That's not why he has this view. He has this view because he genuinely has this view. But now let's respond to it. So the point he's making is like, you don't have the numbers. What's the fucking point? You're not going to win. Why would you do it? That's what he's saying. But my response to that is, we will literally never have the numbers. Never. So does that mean we should never fight for it and never get a vote on it? Now, if he's being logically consistent, he would say yes. If he was being logically consistent, he would say, yes, we're never going to get a vote on Medicare for all, and I'm okay with that. Now, I presume he wouldn't say that because I totally believe him that he's for Medicare for all. So then that leads to the next question, which is, if we're never going to have the votes, and we don't have the votes now, but we have a block of progressives who can apply pressure, why would you not use the block of progressives who can apply pressure? Guys, you know, I've said it a million times, but I have to say it a million more, apparently. I'm not the one who came up with these strategies. When we founded Justice Democrats, it was based on let's be a left Tea Party. And the Tea Party, famously, they despised Obama as much as they despised John Boehner. And they gave their party hell. And because they gave their own party hell, and they threw tantrums, and they were willing to shoot the hostage, they got a lot of concessions. So I didn't come up with this. I looked empirically at the things that worked, and I said, let's do that on the left. Now, it's mighty inconvenient for everybody who is having this force the vote debate because they're acting like there's some sort of high-minded wisdom in not fighting, and they would point to the fact that, look, the Justice Democrats aren't fighting, so therefore, this must be the right move, but it's pretty inconvenient that a co-founder of Justice Democrats is telling you, you're wrong. And what would be in the spirit and the vein of the reason why the group was created would be for them to try force the vote. So, if we're never going to have the votes, and we don't have the votes now, but we have a bloc that can throw their weight around and apply pressure and use their leverage, of course you should apply pressure. Of course you should, use your leverage. Now, listen, I'm under no illusions. Am I saying, like, this is definitely going to pass? No, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is a 1% chance is a hell of a lot better than a 0% chance, and you're guaranteed a 0% chance if you don't fucking vote on it. So, how would we even have a 1% chance? I should explain that. Listen, I was part of the original move where we decided, this was Justice Democrats and it was a bunch of the other lefty groups, we decided, this was back when I was with them, let's do a massive drive to get Congress people who are already there to sign on to, at the time it was John Conyers' bill. I think it was H.R. 676. It was the Medicare for All bill in the House. And so what we did, again, it was myself, it was Justice Democrats, Cenk Uygur, it was all the other lefty groups. We did this massive pressure campaign where we had everybody, including you guys. I remember talking about it on this show. This is the power I have is through this show, right? So I told you guys, call your Congress people and call them in droves and tell them, if you support H.R. 676 and sign on to it, I will do everything I can to get you reelected, and I'll tell everybody I know to vote for you. If you're not for H.R. 676, not only will I not vote for you, I will look for a primary opponent against you and support the primary opponent against you. And guys, even though these politicians are corrupt and beholden to big money interests, you know what happened? They thought, holy shit, I'm getting so many calls in my office that my mailbox is full, or my, voicemail box is full, that's what I meant to say. And the phone's ringing nonstop off the hook and everybody's saying the same thing. If I don't do this, I'm going to lose my reelection. So what happened? We took the number of politicians who were for Medicare for All in the House. It was like 6 or 12 or some abysmally low number. And we brought it to over 100. We brought it to over 100. Now, that was when we decided, let's do a pressure campaign. That was mostly through phone calls. If you get to a place where you force a vote in the House on Medicare for All, you say, we're going to deny Nancy Pelosi her speakership unless and until there's a vote on Medicare for All. That is a mobilizing moment where now it's not just all the progressive groups on the same page and everybody making phone calls, right? Now it's also, let's march on Washington. Let's try to get 1 million bodies in the streets saying we need universal health care in a pandemic. We're the only developed country that doesn't have universal health care. So when you have that mobilizing moment and that spark, and the vote is going to happen, well, you bring immense pressure on Washington, D.C. Now, even given that, Do I think it's going to pass? Probably not. Probably not. But I do think it'll do better than a lot of people believe. And so, if/when it fails, and again, I only think it's like a 1% chance of success, but if/when it fails, it's not over. See, this is the thing. Everybody thinks it's cool and edgy to be like defeatist or really intellectual. I'm so intellectual that I never want to vote on any of my priorities. The fuck is that? You only see this on the left, by the way. You never see it on the right, ever. They're always like, what are you talking about? I vote 1,000 times on the shit I want implemented. And that's my message to the left. You can just keep voting on. If you lose, you regroup, you come back, and you do it again. If you're a professional basketball team and you lose one game, do you say, we're quitting the league? No, you show up for the next game, and you fight, and you practice, and you fight some more. It's the same thing in politics. If you lose a Medicare for All vote, okay, regroup, and go fight again, and try to force another vote. Politics is not rocket science. I will take a vote on one of my priorities at literally any time, and I will use it to try to mobilize, try to organize, try to get the grassroots involved, try to apply pressure, and keep trying to get more and more people. I don't care if we lose the vote 8 times. Maybe we'll get it on the 9th time. But you have to fucking fight. You have to fight. And final point I'll make in response to Noam Chomsky is very simple. Oh, we don't have the vote, so what's the fucking point? That's basically his argument. What are we, children? By the way, I don't think it's a good idea to compare people who need and want Medicare for All to children who want candy. I actually think that's really dismissive and condescending and gross. Because there's a lot of people who were at the Force the Vote town hall who were like, I'm going bankrupt from medical bills. Or I can't afford my medicine. Tens of millions of people with no health insurance. Medical bills is one of the top causes of bankruptcy in the United States of America. You have 45,000 to 60,000 people that die every year because they don't have access to basic health care. Oh, it's like children who want candy. Noam, I know you didn't mean anything by it, but Jesus fucking Christ, man. What are you doing? What are you doing? But the point I was going to make is, his argument is, we don't have the votes, so what's the point? Don't be a child. We don't have the votes for anything right now. Anything. And guess what? I don't want to, make people feel like there's no hope or anything. We will never have the votes for anything. And I mean that literally. I do. It's never going to be like, oh, would you look at that? 60% of the House of Representatives and 60% of the Senate are in favor of fill in the blank, free college, ending all the wars, universal basic income. We are never going to have the votes for any of our priorities, ever. So I ask again, does that mean, what are you, a child? What are you, stupid? You want to waste time on that? What are you doing? No, it doesn't mean that. It means you fight and you claw tooth and nail to win on these things. Sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it's not going to work. But what guarantees loss is never fighting. So you have to do everything you can, and this is part of everything you can do. Now, I will concede this one point, which is, if the argument is, hey, maybe we shouldn't prioritize that because there's a much greater chance it's going to lose, compared to, hey, instead of a 1% chance of Medicare for All passing, there's like a 40% chance of minimum wage passing. So maybe we should have the fight there. That's a fair point, but that's not the point they're making. That's not the point he's making. The argument is, the implication is, we don't have the votes, what's the point? But the response to that is, we don't have the votes for anything. So what's the point of fighting for anything? You fight for it because it's the right thing to do. It's the principled thing to do. And you want the history books to know you did everything you can at every moment in order to do it. I mean, it's like saying, hey, in 1955, why are you going to vote on civil rights? We don't have the votes. That doesn't mean you shouldn't take the fight on. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try to get a vote. That doesn't mean you shouldn't change hearts and minds. That doesn't mean you shouldn't organize with a specific goal in mind of getting the votes. There's a famous quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and again, I'll conclude on this. The time is always right to do what is right. That's it. That's all it is. Everybody thinks they're, it's somehow so high-minded or intellectual or strategic to lay in a chalk outline of yourself and do nothing. It's not. It's not. This stuff matters. And since it matters, the time is always right to do what is right. And if you lose, you fight again. It's that simple. It's that simple. Now, people can call me an idiot or whatever in response to this segment. But, again, just know the people who you guys love so much in Congress, one of the reasons they're there is because of the group I co-founded. So maybe, just maybe, don't be so fucking dismissive about the strategies that we talk about. Because, again, I think there's merit to it. And I've never once heard, hey, this isn't going to work, but this might. There's none of that from anybody who's against force the vote. This isn't going to work, so therefore, not all Chomsky goes on to say is intensive organizing on the ground is the answer. I agree, that's the answer. But towards what ends? You have to organize towards a vote on Medicare for all. That's what you have to do. Like, am I losing my mind here? Am I going crazy? The answer is intensive organizing on the ground, but we already have an overwhelming majority of the population is on the side of Medicare for all. We already have that. All the polls show that. And we're already in a pandemic. It turns out the only real constituency against it right now is people on the far right, but then also the health insurance lobby. Because it's corruption. It's a scam. They've bought a lot of the politicians. So, I mean, think about it. Organize more among people who already agree with you, basically. That's not the end-all be-all. You do need to intensively organize on the ground and get even more support, but you need to organize on the ground towards the vote. What are you just organizing for no reason? Let's organize, but let's not have the vote, but let's definitely organize. Or let's organize and let's have the vote in 10 years? Well, I got news for you. We're not going to have the votes in 10 years either. So you got to try to make it happen. Organize and maybe in 20 years we'll have the vote. We're never going to have the votes. And so you have to try to get us to a position through fighting towards the end of having the vote to have even a prayer. God, okay, I know I said last point a million times. But Lyndon B. Johnson was a vicious racist. A vicious racist. He signed the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. It would have been so easy a year before that to be like, what's the point fighting? He's a vicious racist. He's never going to sign those bills. Why are we wasting our time? But he ended up signing them, didn't he? Because the political reality changed on the ground. The only way you force these politicians and pressure these politicians to do the right thing is if you and I change the political reality on the ground. We're not just some passive observers of what's going on in politics. We are active participants. So do the active participation as much as possible and fight every opportunity you get. And if we lose, which we probably will, regroup and fight again and do it until you fucking win. I'm tired of this defeatist nonsense. I'm sorry, I am. I love Noam Chomsky, huge intellectual hero of mine. He's not corrupt. This doesn't mean I'm canceling him or whatever, but I just really disagree on this point. And I think the thing that's most frustrating to me is how dismissive a lot of intelligent people are of the only strategy at this point that had any chance of working. Well, now we missed our window, and we'll have to regroup and find another way. But I'll take a 1% chance over a 0% chance any day of the week. Apparently, these people won't.